Masculinity. Let's start off with the dictionary definition. Of or related to characteristics traditionally attributed to men. Logically, that is a super broad statement. Before moving on, I'll just ask into the ether, if these characteristics are traditionally in males, whose tradition? Anyways, that's the definition that we'll begin with. There's a concept called precarious manhood. The short of it is that masculinity is achieved, sometimes through painful means. Another way to put that is that you have to go through something. You have to earn your masculinity. It's after the traditional ritual, peep the phrasing, is completed to satisfaction that one becomes a man. I started this with an inkling of hypothesis, but literally writing the script for this video, I decided to not pussyfoot around, so I'll just continue and bravely make my point. So let's touch on femininity for a moment. I'm such a child. Anyways, let's touch on femininity for a moment, if only to contrast and reflect masculinity. Let's say femininity is defined as traits traditionally attributed to women. Follow me for a moment. Precarious femininity doesn't seem to be something that's explored by scholars publicly, if at all. I mean, I looked for about, I would say like a total of 7 hours combined on the internet. And I've probably looked in the last month for precarious, for things about precarious femininity for about like, I looked maybe a total of maybe like 3-4 hours combined. So, you know, not insignificant, but not on some super scholarly shit. So like I said, I don't know if anybody's even thought out and wrote an idea of precarious femininity. I basically said all of that to say femininity doesn't seem to be thought of as dependent on action. It seems to be traditionally just accepted as inherent to females, which, like the broad definition, the dictionary definition of masculinity, poses some logical problems. But again, this is not about femininity. That was just to put it there so you have something to compare and contrast, and, you know, basically just a reflection on the concept of masculinity. So let's move on. How can these things be so parallel, but at the same time so perpendicular? So much the same, but so different? As a scientist, I have to throw out the ideas of masculinity and femininity altogether. If masculinity is, or at least can be, precarious, what's to prevent a capable female of becoming legitimately masculine? She can just go through the rites and the rituals of masculinity and thusly earn that title. Conversely, if masculinity is not precarious, but it's inborn, how can a male be legitimately feminine, aka have one or more traditionally feminine traits? It may seem in the way I'm posing these questions that I'm implying the answer to them, but what I'm really saying is the idea of masculinity, the concept of it, is flawed because there are still, at the very least, the questions that I just posed regarding it. It basically just warrants further study, further debate, further talking about, if you will. So I'm just saying straight out though, masculinity, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. It's a weak concept. I'm calling that as a male, I'm saying that as a male human with traditionally masculine traits. He, man, rah, rah. I'm all man. But I don't, nor do I think anyone knows what masculine means. If we keep the term in our lexicon, we owe it to ourselves to have a clear definition so that we can teach it to each other and our future generations. In other words, if we're going to raise boys to be masculine, and we're going to raise girls to be feminine, or encourage men and women to be masculine and or feminine at will, at their comfort, at their leisure, and what's according to what they perceive as their nature, we owe it to ourselves and them to have clear definitions on what's considered masculine, what's considered feminine, so that it's kind of easier to know when you're blending in with femininity when you're reaching for masculinity, and that's okay. It makes it a little bit easier and less confusing to discover if you're not just strictly in one of these boxes, or even not in one of the boxes at all. With all that, you may be wondering, why is masculinity so important then? It's pervasive in most, if not every culture, so why are you going so ham? Well, I'm arguing that while every culture has concepts and ideas of what makes someone masculine, it's still to date an ill-defined concept. Therefore, its significance should only be philosophical and not even really be used in a sociological sense at the moment. I'll even extend a bit further and emphasize, we just need better terms and definitions for things related to masculinity. Why? Because it's a loose sociological and philosophical theory that's already widely considered separate from being male or female. So if we've gone as far as a group of humans to flesh the concept out that far, then where's the rest of it? Because that kind of already shatters the preconceived notion that most of us have that being masculine is intrinsic to being male. So we got a little bit more to go before we really got this masculine shit down. So in terms of that term, I don't really like using it. And this is coming from a He-Man rah-rah dude. Just straight up. Alright, peace.